In today's video, I'm going to be providing you with the timeline of chickens. We're going to go assuming that they live for about 6 years. Usually they could get up to 12 years if you're lucky, but for the most part 3 to 6 years is what you should expect from a production layer. We're not going to use production layers, we're going to use more like pet layers, but like we don't care. So let's get into it. We're going to start off from birth and we're going to go to 6 years old when the chicken might suffer a fatal ending. Let's get to it. On day number 1, the chicken hatches from an egg, either usually at a hatchery, but you sometimes on your farm or someone else's farm, which is technically a hatchery, but okay. So they hatch out, right? And when you know what they do? They immediately look for hot temperatures of above 88 degrees Fahrenheit, which I don't know what that is in Celsius. So you round that up to 90 degrees to begin out your chicken journey. So the first thing that you end up doing is quite simple. Your chickens will be looking for warmth, and because naturally they'll be trying to hide underneath the broody chicken that's helping them hatch, they'll usually like hide in an area where the temperature is the hottest. So if they're in an incubator, which they usually are, then they'll probably be hiding in a warm area. This is the time where most personal breeders that like use actual broody chickens to hatch other chickens, which are usually the more quality ones, like with Kit Kat Fluff and Fluff Ball. Usually those chickens, they'll go immediately under there, but you also want to put them into the brooder. Now after around 3 weeks, their first feathers begin developing. It begins a bit earlier depending on the gender of the chicken, so roosters will begin a bit earlier, and at this point they're also beginning to develop some facial features. This is about the time when you can begin deciphering what's a hen and what's a rooster based on their comb size, but it's not a 100% reliable technique. I'll say it's about an 80% reliable technique, so use it, but don't get rid of them immediately. Just wait till you begin hearing crows, which that'll usually happen somewhere between 6 to 12 weeks old. If you have a green queen rooster, as I said, named Falcon, who has a white, orange, and black feather tone, and of course lives in northwestern Connecticut, then he'll probably begin crowing at like 18 weeks old, but we don't talk about that. Now by the end of their 3rd month, that's when they usually begin developing a cluck. So their peep sound goes away. It doesn't really sound like a high-pitched peep anymore. Sometimes they'll begin developing that even sooner. Let's see, the average time is around 3-ish months old. So you'll begin hearing a deeper and deeper cluck. This is a sign that they'll begin laying soon. It's not a 100% upfront guarantee they'll begin laying soon. It's just a somewhat guarantee that they'll lay their first egg sometime in the near future. Alright, and so you reach around month 5 to 6, and that's when your chickens are going to begin laying their first eggs. Yep, their first eggs will be generally smaller than the eggs that they'll lay later down the line, but for the first few weeks they will be laying these really tiny midget eggs that you'll only find from baby chickens or quail or bantams. Bantams will lay even smaller eggs when they just begin laying their eggs because they're just beginning it. Their systems have just opened up, so they need to learn all this new stuff. So you finally made it to about month 9, and that's when their eggs begin to kick into high gear. The combs and wattles have grown exponentially. The roosters are pretty much crowing at this point and have reached full maturity. At this point, the chickens are in probably around 19 or 20 in human years. So they're getting to that age where they know what they're doing at this point, you know? They're beginning to know all this stuff that chickens need to know to survive in life. They've known all that for months now, and they're just really good at it. Look at the sunset, man. It looks crazy, yo. See the moon's up there a bit too, yo? We're in the backfields because we're towing all my vehicles that got stuck out there because the chains broke off, so we need to tow that back. But yeah, that's why I'm out here, yo. At about 1 year old, your chicken is pretty much in full maturity, and they're just off of their peak. They're beginning their peak pretty soon, and their peak will last for many, many more years to come. They've pretty much taken at about a year old, that's when their hiatus begins to end. They usually take a hiatus from months 9 to 12 because it's either the winter if you get them, because most people get them in the spring, or they just take a hiatus regardless of where you live. Okay, my temperature does actually play a big role, so that's why some chickens, like probably the ISA brown, my ISA browns only lay me probably 190, 200 eggs a year, but down south they'll easily be able to outnumber that because, you see, they don't get snowstorms that produce a foot of snow at a time down there. And if they did, they'd be screwed entirely. And thus at 18 months old, your chickens will go into their biggest hiatus yet, losing all their feathers and supplement for new ones. You wanna know why? Because they need that sort of stuff to survive. They need that new layer of feathers. By this point, they're about to enter their absolute peak, which will happen as long as the rooster isn't a complete idiot, like mine is. And by 2 years old, that's when they absolutely hit their peak. Well, technically their second peak. The first peak is at like 13 months old, but they just absolutely peak at this point. They're in their peak physical performance. They're in like their 30s in human years. They're at like peak, man. They're peaking by 2 years old, but after this time period, it just begins to fall down. That's why 3 years old is considered the maximum age for most laying hens, because at this point, they're either gonna A, get butchered, or B, get retired. And I'd prefer them to get retired, but chicken nuggets are good, okay, man? You cannot disprove that. But hey, I mean, like, but hey, but at this point, they're just senior chickens. They age really quickly between 2 and 3 years old. They go from about 30 to 50 really quickly. At age 3, they're pretty much at their last year of full egg production. So by their age of 4, their egg production count is down by, I'd say, around 30 to 40%, but considered to what it was when they were age 1. It's not as bad as it will be in the future. So if a chicken was laying like 200 eggs a year, they'd be laying significantly less. By the time they reach 5 years old, they'll finally go through what as many people consider their final molt they'll ever see, which for my chickens will be happening in 2025. This final molt is just their last molt. By this point, they've got their old lady or old man feathers. They're really old at this point. They're no longer in good condition, and a chicken that would once be able to lay 250 eggs a year will now only be able to lay like 130 because their systems are shutting down. This is the age where most chickens begin dropping due to medical conditions, and they're not really able to run away. Roosters live for significantly less than hens. I'd assume that most hens will probably get you to around 9 years old. For roosters, they'll run you like 4 to 6 if you're lucky, really. If they don't get attacked or anything during the duration of those first few years, and they'll probably drop dead due to some other complication. Especially Falcon. I don't really expect him to live far past like 3 or 4, because he is, how do I put this nicely, insanely overweight for a rooster. Like, he is at least 12 pounds. And no, that's not because we overfeed him. No, he just eats more than the average chicken would. So by 5, that's when they begin dropping dead. By 6 years old, assuming that you've lost 0 chickens due to predatory issues and 0 chickens due to brooder failures and stuff like that, and you got 10 chickens, let's just say, by this point, I'd say you've lost about like 3 to 6 of them at the very least due to medical conditions between the ages of 5 and 6. I'd say it's more like a quarter of them, but like, okay. By this time, they're finally beginning to shut down egg production. So they lay like 30 to 60 eggs a year versus 230 to 260 that they used to lay. Although sometimes you can still get some pretty decent like numbers. For the most part, this is when they begin to just shut down and they just chill. This is like their retirement home, yo. Now all the chickens they gotta do is they gotta buy a Corvette or something like that, an old BMW, something like that, and then they'll be officially retired, yo. You know how it is with them, man. Well, that's all the chickens need to be officially retired, yo. And they also need a good pension, too, for laying all those eggs that they've laid for you, personally, during the duration of their life. So that's about 6 years of chicken's life, covered in, I'd say, 5 to 8-ish minutes. I don't really know how long this video is, to be honest with you, because my voice changes speed very consistently. So yeah, that was pretty much it. Let's cut to the outro. Oh wait, before I leave, you want to go down below, maybe about half an inch or so, click that little like button, man. It's probably glowing right now. Same with that subscribe button, you know. We're trying to reach 3,000 before April 1st. Let's go. Bye.